Places like East Tennessee are great to live. There's a lot of places like it, I'm sure. But in the area where we live, lots and lots of options as far as congregations. And that means the church is strong in many ways and cooperative. And so there are many blessings. One of the negatives, one of the drawbacks of having so many options is when you get tired of this group or these elders or this preacher, you can just get mad and take off and go somewhere else. And I've known quite a few people who do this. So let's talk a little bit more about that. I'm Zach. This is The Average Christian. It's a project about what it means to have a relationship with God and how do I live this out in practical terms. So one of the things we need to get in our minds is kind of like JFK, and I hope I don't fumble it. It's an easy quote and a popular quote about not asking what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And so I know you've heard it and it sounds corny. I understand the risk there. But if you insert the church, there's so many of us now in Christendom, in Christian culture, if you will, are worried about what am I going to get out of this deal? You know, Janet Jackson had a song years ago, "What have you done for me lately?" And that's kind of how we treat the congregation or where we attend. And so I have known multiple people, as I was getting ready to say earlier, that have just moved from one congregation to the next. And they think that the problems are all these congregations. And this one's, doesn't have this or doesn't pay attention to that or whatever. And really the common denominator, the people that just continue to move and try to find a new church home because they're the problem. And they, many of us, how many of us go to worship and think, I'm here to be served? And it's never, ever going to work. And we could go to various places. I think of Ephesians chapter 4, where it talks about us, each member working properly. And the solution is not in more options. The solution is not in changing this and changing that about this person or this group of people or whatever. The solution is in my own heart. And I have to go into this relationship, this family, as God adds us to the Lord's church, Acts chapter 2 and verse 47, as he adds us into this family wherein we're adopted in Romans chapter 8, I have to go in with a servant mentality because that's exactly how Jesus came here. He did not do anything for himself. Everything that God has done since the creation of the world has been for humanity. So how dare I start looking for what I think is the perfect group and the perfect congregation? And so, yes, this is a challenge, not to just those people who seem to switch congregations, like they change pants, but all of us. How many of us have thought recently, what do I add? I had to, when I was going to Bible camp, I'm going to Philippians chapter 2 in a moment, but when I was going to Bible camp as a teenager, it was always about what I got out of camp. It was my favorite week out of the year, 51 weeks spent looking forward to that week. And I couldn't wait because of what I got from it. As I moved and transitioned into staff and grew older, I still had that same mentality. And it dawned on me that I have to show up already with an established relationship with God so that I can set the example, so that I can set the tone. How many of us go to work? Let's just take work. How many of us go to work and we hope to be cheered up? We hope to have a boss that's in a great mood. We hope everybody else is in a great mood, but we're not prepared to show up and give our best. How many of us show up for worship and we hope that we get something out of the class? We hope the teacher is good. We hope that the singing is good or whatever else. Instead of, I'm going to go in today and I'm going to set the tone. And I'm going to encourage everybody I come there. I want to make sure they leave there feeling stronger and better. I'm going to provoke them, evoking Hebrews 10. I'm going to provoke everybody I come in contact with to love and good works. Well, it starts with a mentality, and you had some of that selfishness, that mindset running through with the minds of brethren in Philippi. I'm going to get it together here in a second. But in Philippians chapter 2, Paul challenges them. And these things are true. And he says, if there is any encouragement in Christ, of course there is. If any comfort from love, absolutely. Any participation in the Spirit, that's what we all baptized into, this one Spirit. Any affection and sympathy. Complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. Now, how do I do that? It sounds, like a far reach. It sounds difficult because we all have our struggles. We all have our different opinions, our different ideas, our different places in life. Well, here it is. Verse 3, do nothing from selfish ambition. It doesn't have to be your idea. It doesn't have to be the way you like it. Speaking of, look, elders would never, ever have the right to say, let's say you're talking about the men who get up and lead worship and how they dress. They would never have the right to say it's a sin if you don't wear a tie and a sport coat in leading worship. And they don't have that right, biblically speaking. Now, if these elders say, look, we would prefer, this is the tone we want to set, we would prefer if you got up to lead in whatever way that you dressed in a certain way. No problem with that. You may not agree with it. You may not like it because it wasn't your idea. It doesn't go with what you think is the best way, but they're the leaders in the congregation. I don't know how many brethren I know complain about suggestions and things that elders ask for because they don't agree with it. They don't like it. Well, that's just selfish. It's got to be my way, or I'm going to complain about it, or I'm going to take off and go in this direction and go over here with this bunch of people because they do things more the way I like it. Well, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility, count others more significant than yourselves. It is one thing that came up in my mind not too long ago, in fact, just a few years ago. It is so difficult to look down on people that you highly respect or that you hold in high regard. Now, listen again, in humility, count others more significant than yourselves. So if I look at every other child of God and say they are more significant than I am, it doesn't have to berate me. It just means I respect them in that way. It's going to be hard to look down. It's going to be hard to be so disagreeable. And that's really part of the problem too, is we want our way. We want things the way we like them and so forth. And instead of being a servant and what can I add to the Lord's church? What gifts do I have that will help benefit everybody else? It's still that mentality of what am I going to get out of this? Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Verses 3 and 4 are your recipe, how we look at each other, how we pay attention to the needs of other people, how we refuse to do anything for ourselves, anything with our motives in mind, but everything with a servant attitude. If we do that, you're putting the church way before you. And by the way, I know so many of us act this way because we're afraid we're going to get left out. We're going to be looked over. But if everybody looks out for everybody with this same mentality, nobody gets left out. So I hope that when you go worship with your brethren, when you think about what your local congregation is going to be involved in and going to be doing, that you think about what you're going to add to that, how you're going to set the tone. If there are problems that need to be resolved, and there are, because there's people, that you're going to try to figure out how you can alleviate those problems, how you can make things better instead of make things more difficult, or tuck tail and run to what you feel like is a better situation. Because I guarantee you, you won't be there very long till you find out that group has problems too, and you're just going to be in this huge cycle of constantly running from one situation to the next. Let me just add this disclaimer real quick, just so you understand. There are certain times when it's better for you spiritually to move on from a group, to make changes, and that notwithstanding, we're just talking about this selfish mentality that can exist when we show up looking what I can get out of this congregation, this situation. I want to thank you for joining us today. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the like button if this video helped you. Over here is our latest release, also one that YouTube recommends. If you're listening on podcast, thank you for being with us. Please subscribe, rate, and review. The idea is to get the word out so this might help more people. With that in mind, consider sharing this.